Okay, continuing on with our theme of Satipatthana, I thought I'd do a reading from this book called Uncommon Wisdom, a collection of teachings of Ajahn Panyawado, who was born in Britain, or was he born in Britain, or he was British, but born in India, but a British citizen and schooled in Britain. And anyway, was a disciple of Lumpur Mahabua in Thailand. And this book is a collection of his teachings pulled together by one of his students, Ajahn Dix Silaratno, who is now the abbot of the monastery in Virginia. So this is his teaching and reflections on contemplation of the body. And it's on page 187 in that collection of teachings titled Uncommon Wisdom. Of all the meditation subjects that the Buddha recommended, body contemplation is probably the most unpopular with Western practitioners. Although body contemplation is very worthwhile, for some strange reason, it's not encouraged much in the West. Very few teachers even mention it. Why is that? They must not realize how valuable it is. Contemplation of the body is an essential component of the Buddha's teaching. This may seem strange in an age when people know all about the world, but know very little about themselves. They've studied science, so when you ask them the reason for doing this or that, or how something works, they can go into great detail. Even if they themselves don't know, they can easily find out by asking someone who does know, or by looking it up in books or online. But when it comes to the human body, what do they know? Even if they know physiology in the medical sense, all they've done is study someone else's body or pictures of the human body in a textbook, not their own body. But surely our bodies are extremely important. If we didn't have a human body, how could we experience the world? The human body allows us to access the world. It is our outlet into the world, so to speak. Surely, to know the body's true nature is essential to our well-being. In order to comprehend its nature, we should ask ourselves, what actually is the human body? What's it composed of? Is it a pleasant thing or not? We can put aside our preconceived ideas about it and just ask objectively, is the body something attractive or not? Let's have a look. Most people in the world seem to think that the body is very attractive, that it's a most desirable thing. But let's look at it and see whether that's true. What happens if we don't wash it for a few days? We've got to keep washing the thing, otherwise it stinks before long and becomes unbearable. Let a few strands of hair fall into a plate of food, and we quickly lose our appetite. Why? Head hair and body hair are inherently filthy, which is the reason that we have to continuously wash them. In fact, nothing that comes in contact with any part of the human body remains clean for long. Due to the dirt and the smell that accumulate on our bodies, our clothing and bed linen must be constantly laundered. Even the food we eat, once it's ground between the teeth and mixed with saliva, becomes filthy as well. There are many such aspects of the body that we must look at to determine whether it's a pleasant thing or not, whether it's beautiful or not. You should search for the truth of the matter. After all, most people think that they are their bodies. If that's the case, surely you should want to know something about yourself. When you are so interested to know everything about the world, why do you leave out the one thing that is the most important of all, yourself? Why not try to get to know yourself? The first step in trying to get to know yourself is to question the nature of the body, because the body is the grossest part of who you are, or who you think you are. However, as you probe more deeply into body contemplation, you begin to realize that the body, in fact, is not you. It comes from the world, and it returns to the world. It's simply part of this earth. It consists entirely of atomic structures, atoms, molecules, chemicals, and so on. And it's nothing apart from these things. It doesn't go beyond the state of physical matter. When you look at it properly, you can see that it isn't really you. It doesn't belong to you. You can't even control its destiny. The body at birth is derived from the world. At death, it returns to the world. There's no way to stop it from rejoining the earth as organic matter. When you cling to the body, it's almost as if you are confining yourself in a prison house. The human body becomes a prison that restricts you to certain conditions from which you cannot free yourself. So you must understand the body's true nature and realize that the body is not what you really are, that clinging to it creates undesirable consequences. Search and find the truth of the matter. After all, why not examine the body? It's such an obvious thing to look at. When you do, you begin to see that your whole outlook on the world depends on the body. Consider any aspect of life, and you'll find that nearly every one of them depends on the body. Houses are built according to the needs of this body. Cars and towns are based on the shape and size of the human body. All the things you use are designed to fit bodily dimensions. Because human beings are attached to their bodies, they have to put up with the vicissitudes of bodily existence, most of which are quite unpleasant. The body has its own momentum. You can't control it. It gets sick, and you can't prevent it. It grows old, and you can't prevent it. Eventually, in its own time, it dies, and you can't prevent that either. The body belongs to the earth. It originates from earthly substance and then returns to the earth. In fact, the body can only live in a physical environment that is suited to bodily existence. The body requires earth to stand on, air to breathe, water to drink, food to eat, energy and heat to function, and so on. All these things come from the earth. Because of that, this body is really just part of the earth. But still we insist on grasping at it and claiming ownership of it. Once we own it, we also own all the difficulties that come along with bodily existence, which we find we don't like. We don't like being sick, we don't like growing old, we don't like dying. The body is something that we are familiar enough with that we can take parts of it in our mind and keep our attention on them, turning them around and thinking about them to see their attributes and their associations, and to see their cause and effect relationships. Because we know so much about the body already, it's a very good basic subject for meditation. Body contemplation takes two basic directions. One is the way of samatha, using calm and concentration as a basis. The other is the way of vipassana, using insight and wisdom as a basis. To practice the way of samatha, you keep your attention on one aspect of the body, like the skin, without thinking much about it. Just keep the skin fixed in your mind as much as you can. One advantage of using this method is that the mind becomes calm and focused. And because the focus of your attention has been concentrated on a part of the body, it's easy to then turn and investigate that body part to develop a deeper understanding of its true nature. The vipassana way of doing body contemplation begins by questioning the nature of the body. What is the nature of skin? Where does skin come from? What is it composed of? What happens if I don't wash it? Suppose I cut off a piece. What lies underneath it? What internal organs is the skin covering up, and what are they like? Consider all aspects of the parts that make up the body. This is the way of developing wisdom, questioning all the time, searching for what's really there. To begin with, take the body as the body. That is, take it in the way you normally experience it in your life. You are not attempting to superimpose a radical new view on the body. Rather, you want to go more deeply into what is right there in front of you and expose some obvious truths about it. You are trying to see this body in what might be called, quote, the light of truth, trying to see what bodily existence means in such a deep and profound way that you realize the body is not you. It is not yours. This is the important point. Later on, you can examine the body as a mental image. At the beginning of body contemplation, however, you must look at the body in the way you normally do. Otherwise, the investigation becomes too nebulous and the practice doesn't progress properly. The first aim of the practice is to discover for yourself the body's repulsive nature, repulsive in the sense that it doesn't reflect the nice image you have of yourself. This discovery counters the normal view that the body is an attractive and desirable part of who you are, a part that deserves your constant fondness and attention. On the other hand, you also understand that the body is a necessary and valuable instrument, because without it, you do not have a physical basis for your mental faculties. Without a physical body, you would not have access to the faculties of thinking and recollection. There'd just be bare knowing, and that's all. Therefore, you must have the body to function. So, although it is seen as undesirable, you are also aware of its necessity. As long as you maintain that balanced view of the body in your practice, you can avoid negative states of alienation and aversion. Although it's up to each individual to decide the best method to use for body contemplation, starting with hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, and skin, usually provides a very good basis. If you feel you would rather investigate the body as arms, legs, head, organs, and so on, that's quite a legitimate practice too. Reflect on how the human body is merely a combination of various parts. It's not a completely homogeneous entity at all. Apart from the head, most bodily parts can be cut off and the body will continue to function. An enormous amount can be removed from the body without death occurring. Then you can reflect. If I refer to this as my body, what about this arm? Is it mine? If it's cut off, is it still mine? So you begin body contemplation by focusing on the parts that make up the body. Head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, bones, and so on. You can either mentally visualize each one or focus your attention on the location of each part, whichever you prefer. This exercise is the training for wisdom, not the wisdom itself. When you keep practicing in this manner, probing and questioning continuously over a long time, you will suddenly see one of the body parts from a totally different angle. It's as though you see the full implications of it in relation to the realms of mind and matter. Take skin, for example. You know its characteristics and its basic functions. Skin is a layer of surface tissue that is necessary to protect the internal organs from exposure and maintain the life of the body. You are aware of all that, but what are the implications of skin as far as your notions of self are concerned? This is what the training for wisdom is trying to uncover. In the end, you realize that skin is just a part of the world. It comes from the world and it goes back to the world. It isn't you. There is nothing of you in it. How could it be you? What you cling to is an integral part of your self-identity. As an integral part of your self-identity is merely a perishable physical substance. When you see these implications clearly, it feels almost as though you are giving up a cherished part of yourself. Seeing the implications and letting go of the attachment is the work of wisdom. It means knowing directly that the skin is not self, not merely thinking about it. Skin couldn't be self. It has no relation to self. That is one method used to overcome attachment to the body. Without developing your faculty of wisdom, you are unaware of how much attachment you have for it. You don't realize how much your self-identity is bound up with the body. For your own physical and mental welfare, it's very important to overcome that attachment. Another effective method for overcoming bodily attachment is the asubha contemplation. The asubha contemplation entails focusing on the human body's inherently impure and loathsome nature. Much of our discontent comes from taking the body as the basis of who we are. It's a central feature of our self-identity. Because of this deep-seated notion, we project a definite sense of self into all of our actions. We deliberately plan our lives around desires related to the body. By contemplating the body's impure nature, we can experience it as inherently unstable, impermanent, and repulsive. In that way, we can reduce the craving built up around the body, until eventually we are able to free ourselves from the strong sense of self associated with it. Because the skin so easily fools us with its deceptive appearance, it deserves a very careful examination. This thin layer of tissue covers the flesh and internal organs of the body. Although at a glance it may appear clean and attractive, Closer inspection shows a scaly, wrinkled layer that exudes sweat and grease. Only constant washing and cleaning makes it bearable to live with. After thoroughly investigating the outer layer, mentally strip off the skin and investigate the internal organs, following whatever method best suits your natural temperament. As you contemplate the body, certain parts or characteristics should begin to stand out and catch your attention. You should focus special attention on those parts. When you investigate deeply into just one body part, until seeing its true nature clearly with wisdom, you will be able to extend that understanding to include the entire body, because all bodily substance has the same nature. It's filthy, disgusting, and repulsive through and through. No desirable and satisfactory personal identity can be found there. But you must understand very clearly that the objective of this contemplation is not to stir up aversion for the body. That would be wrong. You only want to see its loathsome nature. It's rather like opening your refrigerator and seeing a rotten piece of meat that has been there the last 5 weeks. You'd feel it was repulsive, but you wouldn't feel hatred for it. You'd just take it out and drop it into the garbage. That's all. Likewise, with the body, it isn't hatred you want. That's wrong. You want the experience of loathsomeness, a feeling of dismay that you've grasped this body at birth, that you're bound to this body, and that you have to live with it until it dies. Still, while you remain in the body, you have an opportunity to see the Dhamma. In that sense, it's quite valuable. You must use it in the right way to overcome your delusion. This is the true purpose of body contemplation. After practicing the Asubha contemplation intensively, you may later feel irritable or even angry for no apparent reason. This is a reaction to the body contemplation itself. When your deeply ingrained views of physical identity are probed and questioned, the internal forces of delusion build up a feeling of irritation or annoyance. You may feel like a bear with a sore on its head, as they say. In order to quell those negative emotions, you should combine bodily contemplation with another practice like anapanasati or metta to calm down and cool off. This is consistent with what the Buddha taught. He said that when one does bodily practice, one should do anapanasati as well. The body is an interesting object to investigate. You can divide up the body in various ways. Another way is to investigate the body in terms of the physical elements of earth, water, fire, and air. The natural world around us appears to be very real and solid, but it only appears that way because our bodies are composed of the same natural material elements. Fundamentally, there is no difference between the makeup of the human body and the makeup of the physical world. In modern terms, they both consist of atoms and molecules. You should look at the body from that angle and reflect on it. You should also look at the body with the understanding that the 4 elements of earth, water, fire, and air are actually just symbolic representations. In examining matter, scientists have never found an earth element anywhere, nor have they found air, water, or fire elements. They do not exist as actual physical properties. In fact, contemplation of the 4 physical elements is a psychological method of analyzing matter. And mind is the main requirement for making the analysis. You have to contemplate those characteristics subjectively. The mind uses concepts about earth, water, fire, and air to represent material qualities such as solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion, so as to understand the body on a more subtle level. Another interesting approach in body contemplation is to ask, how is the body known? How is it experienced? The answer is that we know the body through feeling. It's feeling that informs us about our bodies. It's difficult to experience the body in any other way. Of course, we can think in terms of the body's constituent parts and so on. These are things we know about because we can see them. But from the perspective of an internal experience, we actually know the body through feeling and sensation. Because of that, the body we know is really a feeling body. That feeling body is a subtle body that's projected into our physical form. Our minds contact the physical body through that projection. So we don't actually know the physical body directly. When we want to investigate our bodies, we must turn to sensations to guide the way. The internal makeup of the physical body is known only by means of a mental image, a concept that comes from seeing pictures depicting what the various parts look like. All of those parts combine to make up the physical body, but that is not the body we know internally. When we contemplate the body by examining those bits and pieces that make it up, we are working with a mental picture of the body. When we contemplate the corresponding feeling body, we may find that the feelings inside paint quite a different overall picture of the body and quite a different understanding of what makes up the body as well. That's why it's important to realize that feeling is the most important aspect of our knowledge of the body. For example, when you feel a pain in your foot, the source of the pain appears to be located in the foot. In fact, sensory impulses are transmitted from the foot to some mechanism in the brain which projects the experience of pain onto the image of the foot in the feeling body. So the experience of pain takes place in the mind's image of the body, which is mentally superimposed on the physical form. We feel the painful sensation in the foot only because our instincts tell us it must be there. In the same manner, the whole body is mirrored in a network of sensations. For that reason, the feeling body is very important. It's the one we know. It is the source of our perceptions of the physical body. If the above method of investigating the body works, then use it. By analyzing the body in this way, we are seeking to see this body for what it really is and drop our attachment to it. In doing so, we realize that our physical body is not so important. It's just a conglomeration of material substances that will one day be reabsorbed into the physical environment. The question then is, why do you grasp at it? People grasp at bodies because they imagine themselves to be secure in bodies, even though the body is not a secure refuge. It is always subject to the uncertainty of disease, old age, and death. At the same time, the body is a very sensitive organism. It relies upon a suitable environment, which means it must have air to breathe, temperatures that are reasonable for human life, and protection from dangers in its environment. All of these factors are necessary. If they are not available, or if they change, the body will perish. Because our bodies are so inherently vulnerable, we should really be looking for security in other ways. When we realize that, in fact, the body does not offer us the security that we want, we should examine the nature of that insecurity to see if there isn't a better way to find a secure refuge than grasping at the human body. When people identify with their bodies, they become concerned about them. Because the body is the basis of their life, they're afraid of losing that base. The body is like a home they can come back to. When their minds go whizzing off somewhere, they can always come back to home base. It anchors them so they feel secure. If the base wasn't there, where could they come back to? There'd be nowhere to return to. When people feel they are drifting, they want to find a foothold, an anchor to hold them firm. Because every part of the body is constantly changing, it is not reliable enough to provide such a secure refuge. Our personal stake in it puts us under its unstable influence. Whatever happens to the body is then experienced as happening to us. When it becomes sick, we become worried and depressed. If the body gets injured, we're distraught. We're distraught because we're attached to the body, thinking of it as an integral part of who we are. When it dies, we're suddenly homeless. Because of our attachment, whatever happens to it happens to us. Once we realize what the body's true nature really is, we are freed from our attachment to it. Then what happens to the body is something that happens separately, externally. It's as though somebody else's body is injured or sick. Pain is experienced in the body, but there is no concern about the pain. It isn't me. It isn't mine. Because it isn't me or mine, it never again has the same sway over our emotions. It no longer pulls us along with it. The mind remains separate and free. Being separate and free, it is also secure. It knows that delusion has been at least partially eliminated. It knows that whatever happens, it won't go in the wrong way. It won't fall back. This is the result we are working for in body contemplation. Once you have examined the body and realize that it is not yourself, when something happens to the body, you are not concerned about it in the same way as before. You know that it's not happening to you. You realize that, although it's happening to the body, that body is not you. Although the physical condition may be unpleasant, the unpleasantness is merely the body's unpleasantness. You are not affected. The purpose of body contemplation is to realize that the body is not you, nor does it belong to you. The body belongs to the natural world. You have grasped at the body and continue to grasp at it by maintaining it in good condition. But the time will come when that body has to return to the world of nature. When you truly realize within yourself that the body is merely a temporary home, something you have on loan, so to speak, then concern for the body drops away. Fear of death also drops away, because you realize that death is simply the death of the physical body. This understanding is not a matter of being alienated from your physical body. Rather, it is seeing with wisdom the truth about its natural state. There are many different forms of body contemplation, but regardless of which method you use, the basic purpose of the meditation practice is to learn to see the body in the light of truth, and thus understand its true nature. This is the crux of the matter. By seeing it for what it is, you realize that it isn't self. That fundamental realization transforms your whole perspective. Having realized that the body is not self, you simply drop it. Eventually, you see that all of life is just shadows, like images flickering on a cinema screen. The knowledge you gain from seeing the truth is very powerful. At the time of death, when the body dies, you know that it's not you that dies. By bringing you to this realization, body contemplation gives a great deal of spiritual and emotional strength and relieves the mind of an enormous burden, both now and in the future. So I really think that sums it up so beautifully, so well and completely, the reason for and various aspects of body contemplation and the various ways that you can use it for exactly the purposes he talks about in this chapter. Any comments, questions?
Thank you so much for that enlightening material. It's hard, I feel like, sometimes, like, it makes sense when I'm doing the contemplation, but then it's like, I get tripped up in the fact that the body's, like, following me around. And so, like, the body doesn't follow anyone, like, this body doesn't follow anyone else around. But why does it follow me around? And that makes it hard for me to, like, really feel and know that this body's not mine. Is there any way you can help me with that?
I don't know. Who is me that the body is following around?
At this point, it's this awareness or consciousness, which is what I'm identifying with.
So when you say it's following your consciousness around, I don't quite get the experience that you're having. You know, that it's separated from that consciousness, but somehow apart from it at a distance, physically or mentally or experientially. You know, it's not quite trying to tease out what this experience actually is for you.
Right. So it's like the experience is that everything, all the sights and sounds and smells and tastes and objects of mind are changing. And there's like this body that seems to have some continuum that stays with me during all of that change. And that trips me up. But then it's like, it's not always tripping me up, because then sometimes when I do the contemplation, it does feel clear, like this body is really not mine. But then it does trip me up sometimes because of these reasons that I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, what you're describing is kind of a complicated picture, an amalgamation of your different perceptions that are going on, the best I can tell anyway. And, you kind of go back and forth between experience and a certain ownership of the body as it's, kind of hanging on to what you call you. And at the same time, you're also imputing a sense of self onto this consciousness. Yeah. So, I mean, you're taking one form of self and saying, you're not going to pick that up as, the body, the experience of the body, but then you're identifying with this, what you call your consciousness, as who you are.
Exactly. That's what I'm.
Well, that's the same. It's the same thing whether you're identifying with your consciousness or with your body that's following this consciousness around. It's all just a form of identification, and whether you're perceiving the body as who you are or something that's following you around, you're relating to it one way or another as something that is related to a you, related to you as a independent or self-existent being, whether you're calling it your body or your consciousness or all of them combined or all the aspects of experience. You're objectifying it into a experience of me, whether it's something that's following you around or whether it is you at times. And I think, in my mind, it's basically just keep stepping back and observing experience and asking yourself whether it's something that is solid, changing, consistent. What is the experience what does it actually feel like? And then ask yourself, well, if it's changing, if it's not the same from one moment to the next, if my experience feels like it's mine sometimes and doesn't sometimes, if this is who I think I am, if consciousness is who I think, all of these are perceptions and ideas that are constantly in flux and motion, and just step back and know them as mental proliferations. Mental complications, perceptions that turn into ideas, and that you're trying to kind of understand it and figure it out on a mental level. You're trying to define, in some way, your this wish to find a stronghold in experience, something that feels secure or predictable or explainable. Is trying to manifest in one way or another in the form of concepts, development of concepts. And to just step back and just go simple, just say, what does it feel like? And understand the experience on a feeling level, and then just step back from it and don't try to figure it out so much on a mental, explainable, conceptual level. And then just let it happen, drop back from it and don't constantly involve this thinking process into trying to form it into something that is, quote unquote, intellectually understandable. That's just my sense, is because essentially, you're, as we all do, creating a whole layer of suffering by forming additional concepts and opinions, trying to get it all sorted out. You don't need to do that, as long as it doesn't involve thinking too much. Just kidding. Yes, please say one more.
What you're saying is like dead on, where it's either I'm identifying with the consciousness or awareness, or I'm identifying with the body or some other aggregate. And it's like, I find it hard to investigate how the awareness or consciousness is like not something stable or permanent, because it's so like, I mean, there's like it's difficult to like name its characteristics. So it's like, how do I do
Just
that investigation?
don't do it. Yeah,
okay,
just don't do it. If it's difficult to try and name and label something, then don't do it, because all you're trying to do is pin something down that's unpinnable, downable. It's just step back and don't try and categorize, don't try and analyze. Just step back and know it.
For Sumedho's constant refrain about, trust in awareness, intuitive awareness. So the awareness is, if you trust in it, you trust in that, then as the thinking process wants to add layers onto, but it's like this, what's like that, and how do I figure this out? Then just coming back to that trust of like just watching and knowing and understanding, and then there's an intuitive sense that develops out of that, where it's like there's an intuition to stay with what you're seeing and what you're observing, like just being with the experience and not adding more layers on top of that experience, like oh, I have to figure what this is, because that's just more of self and becoming and trying to kind of it's create, really. So it's that removing that creative force, because it's something that's it's like an obstructive habit, whereas the sense of intuition is something that comes from the heart. It's something that one like knows when one is observing or seeing clearly. Then there's like this kind of falling back into this, oh, this feels right, or this is okay. But the mind is always kind of trying to think of like, this isn't okay, I have to figure it out. So then when that awareness is trusted, like actually like, oh, okay, I can keep trusting in that, then it seems like it's something that can be very valuable, just in terms of seeing it in that way, I think. But I've just appreciated that kind of sense of, because I think, as Ajahn Karunadhammo was pointing out, like Lumpur Sumedho would similarly point out to our sense of needing to figure it out and get it right, and like the thinking process comes in, and it's just like, no, it's okay, it's okay, I don't need to go there. And then that what develops is this kind of like continual trust that awareness will help you see very clearly, and eventually insight, I think, can arise out of that, because all that notion of anicca and anatta, the not self, and the sense of impermanence, or seeing these things as dukkha, they're always in the back of our mind anyway. So they'll kind of come up as I think intuitions or insights, just very naturally. But I don't think they come up very naturally if we're putting more and more layers of thought and kind of creating of self. Another take on it.
Something just occurred to me too, that just to take that a little one step further, we're kind of moving way beyond the actual very simple task of doing body contemplation, but it reminds me, where this is going, of a question I had once from somebody a few years ago, basically saying that, doing all of these kinds of contemplations, and now he's was contemplating Lumpur Sumedho's teachings on awareness and the knowing quality of mind, and reflecting on what he had heard, Lumpur Sumedho or others oftentimes say, and questioning it is like when people say, using common language, like being the observer, just be the observer, be the knower. And he was saying that he preferred to phrase it in his mind as not so much being the knower, but being the knowing, so that it takes the personal identity out of it. And so he was asking me, does that sound right? And I said, to me, it sounded like, going in the right direction, but maybe even taking it one step further in my experience, is not even, not being the knower or being the knowing, but just knowing. Because being anything leads to suffering. So rather than just walking along your meditation path or sitting and reflecting and contemplating and, okay, I'll just be the knowing, even being the knowing is being something. So step back even a bit further and just know, just knowing. Allow your experience to just knowing. And the whole purpose is not to, reify or establish something as an identity, but to be able to clearly see. So in that just pure knowing, clarity of what it is that you have identified with, whether it's body, feelings, perceptions, mental activities, consciousness itself, whether it's any one of those, if you can see it clearly, just through the experience of pure knowing, direct knowing, then the veil becomes, you remove the veil of enchantment. You don't buy into any identification with anything anymore because you've seen clearly that all of those experiences are devoid of self, devoid of identification, need for identification. And then that gives rise to that sense of, of clear seeing, clear knowing that is unobstructed by any urge to form an identity around anything. And there's the turning away from the world of illusion, the world of identification with anything, including what we can conceive as consciousness, in the usual way that consciousness is used in the Pali anyway. And it's that clear seeing and relinquishing the need to move forward into being anything, into becoming anything, into identifying with anything, that allows one to just keep stepping back, letting go, not trying to get anywhere, not trying to do anything, but just stepping back into clear knowing. That's it. And then there's the opportunity to just relinquish and do a complete letting go that allows an experience of the unconditioned. But it's not through any forward movement or forward process. It's just through stepping back, not trying to create, not trying to understand, not trying to conceptualize, but just knowing the experience and keeping, the identification apart, not doing that.